Hi everybody, it's Ms. V. Hope you're ready for another science video. And today we'll be talking about the importance of biodiversity and ecosystem services. Now you might be wondering, okay, Ms. V, what are you talking about? So let's break it down. Biodiversity, if we break that down further, we can look at bio and diversity. Bio here means life. Diversity means having a wide range of things. Right? If you have a diverse taste in music, it means that you enjoy a lot of different types of music. So when we combine these two words together, it means having a wide range or lots of different types of living things. You might also be wondering about what an ecosystem service is, and we're going to talk about that right away. An ecosystem service is a benefit that a sustainable ecosystem gives to the living organisms that live in it. So by having a happy and healthy ecosystem, it actually gives different benefits to the animals that live within it, including humans. Now, these services are the natural result of all the activities that occur in that biosphere or that area, or that environment. Without sustainable ecosystems, Earth would lose most of the services that ecosystems provide. Now, I want you to think about what an ecosystem service might be. What is something that we as humans benefit from our ecosystem? What does the ecosystem give to us? I'm going to list a few here, but feel free to pause the video and think on this a little bit more if you'd like some more time. Now, number one ecosystem service is that forests use that CO2 in the air and then create breathable oxygen for us to breathe, as well as help to maintain soil fertility so that we can grow lots of plants. They also help regulate those nutrient cycles that we learned about last week, cycling carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, although we didn't talk about this one too much. Now, the balancing of these processes helps with growth and decomposition and helps to make sure that those cycles stay properly in balance. It also helps to provide habitat for 2 million known species, including us humans. It's also a source of beauty and spirituality for many people. Now, there's even more, so let's go ahead and name a few more. It also provides humans with food, timber, and fossil fuels that we heavily rely on for life, as well as many of our medicines, which are derived from plants. Did you know that the common compound in aspirin that helps take away headaches and makes you feel a bit better is actually found in willow bark? Ecosystems maintain populations of organisms as well. So our ecosystems help with pest control, pollination, waste management, as well as many other processes that we benefit from. Right? If you've had honey in the past couple of days, maybe in your tea, you have definitely benefited from the ecosystem's use of regulating bees. Now let's talk about some specific ecosystems, like the forest. What does that one specifically provide to humans and other animals? Well, the number one ecosystem service of a forest is that most of our forests absorb 1/3 of the carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere. Right? Carbon dioxide absorption and oxygen release is a very important ecosystem service for forests to supply because, of course, we need air and oxygen to breathe. Forests also help to maintain soil. You may not have known this, but by having plant and tree roots in our soil, it actually helps to keep the soil from eroding and washing away. Now, you may have noticed sometimes in a really strong prairie wind, if you're in an area with absolutely no trees, some of that dirt and that soil actually gets blown up into the air. This is what I'm talking about when I say eroding. So by having those strong winds, sometimes it can actually take away some of the nutrients and the healthy soil. So by having some tree roots and trees in there, it's going to help keep those nutrients and that healthy soil from being blown away, for lack of a better term. Now, another ecosystem that many people forget about is wetlands. Wetlands are so important, guys. I cannot stress this enough. Wetlands are magical. They are so cool. If you ever have a chance to go out to a marsh or a wetland, definitely take up that opportunity because they are amazing places where you see so many animals. Now, wetlands are sometimes referred to as the Earth's kidneys. And this is because they filter sediment and pollutants from the water. It's like a natural area where it's going to take all the bad stuff we don't want in the water and take it up so we actually don't have to see too much of it. Now, wetlands also store water, reducing the risk of floods, which is really important, especially in the area we live in. They store carbon as well, which is also really good for our CO2 emissions. And this reduces its impact on climate change and provide an amazing habitat for fish and game. So a lot of duck species also really rely on wetlands for a place to live and to raise their young. So if you ever want to hear a little bit more about wetlands, please email me because I would love to have a conversation about these. They're really amazing places. They also provide migrating birds with a place to rest and feed. So as we've seen more and more wetlands being destroyed, mainly to help with developments for housing or for commercial lots, we've been taking away wetland space. And so we actually see less migratory birds, primarily ducks, coming here to rest and feed. Now, this can definitely affect our ecosystem because we're also going to be reducing all of that extra water storage and those carbon stores. You also see less phosphorus being taken up. Now, this is a nutrient found in fertilizers that gets washed down into our water and causes big algal blooms. Now, this is the big explanation for why Lake Winnipeg turns green. By having more wetland areas, it would actually take up more of that carbon and that phosphorus, and we wouldn't see as many algal blooms happening in Lake Winnipeg. However, we still need to make sure that we are protecting these wetlands and making sure that they are there so they can do their job. Another one we're going to talk about is insects. Now, they also provide an important ecosystem service, even if they are kind of annoying in the summer. Insects, primarily bees, provide that essential service of pollination. Without insects as pollinators, we would not have all the plants, fruits, and vegetables that we need for all of our vitamins. Now, the commercial estimated crop pollination service value, whatever you want to call it, is estimated to be about $1.2 billion per year in Canada alone. That's a crazy amount of money, and that is all done through the pollination of insects. Now, I've talked about all of these ecosystem services separately, but it's important to remember that these all exist together and cohesively in order for this all to work. Kind of like they're all connected in a way. So ecosystems are not usually defined as specific spaces. They overlap over one another and help one another out. Ecosystems can also be linked together, even if they are separated geographically. So this is called connectivity, when two ecosystems rely on each other, even if they're separated by a large amount of distance. For example, do you remember 2 weeks ago when we talked about the monarch butterflies and how they migrate from Canada to Mexico and how the population size really depends on both of those ecosystems being happy and healthy? This is an example of connectivity. I have another example we're going to talk about as well. Migratory songbirds also rely on Canada in the summer and spring and then travel to South America in the fall and winter. Now, several of these species have populations on decline, and that's mainly because lots of these birds choose to live in South America over the winter. But many of these forests are being clear-cut for farming coffee. So now they don't have a place to nest and to live, and so their population is now declining because they do not have a healthy ecosystem to survive in over the winter. Now, Canadian and South American ecosystems are connected to each other through these songbirds. Essentially, each ecosystem relies on one another, even though they are separated by a large amount of distance. Now let's talk a little more about biodiversity. Now, Earth has about 2 million known species, which is already a crazy amount, but it's estimated that there's actually between 5 and 100 million species that we don't even know about, many of which we think are probably hiding somewhere in the ocean, in the deep, deep depths, as well as a lot of insects as well. Biodiversity includes the number and variety of organisms found in a specific region, as well as the number of and variety of ecosystems within and beyond that region. So we're looking at how many organisms live there, as well as how many different types, right? How many tigers live there, or how many different cats, how many cats live in Steinbach, as well as how many different types of cats live in Steinbach. How diverse is my number of organisms? An ecosystem with greater biodiversity will be more likely to provide important services reliably. And this is because if one of those species gets taken out, at least we have another one that can still do the job. A good example of this is, let's say, an important insect that pollinates all of our plants. If we only have one insect that can do that, then we are in a lot of trouble if that one single insect goes away. However, if we have multiple species of insects that can do the pollination job, then if one of them gets taken out, perhaps by a pesticide or a freak accident, I don't know, we will still be able to pollinate, and that ecosystem service will be able to continue on reliably. So biodiversity is very important. We want to have a very diverse array of life in our ecosystems. It is also believed that this kind of ecosystem will exhibit resilience, which is the ability for an ecosystem to maintain balance, even when in the face of significant outside disturbances. So by having a large range of animals living in our environment, it's more likely that we'll rebound successfully from bad situations. Biodiversity is under attack in some ways, and mainly due to things that humans have done in the earth. Not saying all of us have done this, but it's definitely had an impact on our world's biodiversity. The first is deforestation. Now, this is the practice of clear-cutting trees for other human uses and not replanting them. Also by draining wetlands. This is often done so that land can be used for development or agriculture, or sometimes for reduced mosquito populations, because mosquitoes can only lay eggs in water. So if we get rid of that stagnant water, then we have less mosquitoes during the summer. Now, it seems awesome. However, I would like to deal with a few more mosquitoes and have some healthy wetlands that are helping to take up the extra water around Winnipeg. You decide what you would prefer. Another thing that is affecting our biodiversity is alien species. Now, I don't mean real aliens that come out of the sky. I'm talking about species and animals that are accidentally introduced to a new location. Now, sometimes these species become an invasive species and they harm the animals that live here in their native habitat, but not all the time. We'll talk about that in a minute. The fourth one is overexploitation. Now, this is the use or extraction of a resource until it is depleted. This can also harm biodiversity. Now, back to alien species for a minute. Now, did you know that technically the white-tailed deer is an alien species? You may be surprised by that, and I totally understand why. We see white-tailed deer all over here in Manitoba. However, they didn't actually show up until 1900s. So this means that white-tailed deer were accidentally or intentionally introduced to Manitoba. Now, an alien species can either benefit or be a detriment to their new location, but usually they don't really affect our ecosystem. Just like how white-tailed deer they're not out competing a different animal. So we call them an alien species. They're not really causing a detriment. They actually might be a benefit because they provide us with a new source of food. However, we also have invasive species here in Manitoba. An invasive species is a species that is brought here that did not belong, is not originally from here, and can actually harm the native species that live in this ecosystem. A really good example, and that you may have heard of before, are zebra mussels. Zebra mussels are actually from an area in Europe, and they were brought over on the ballast water in shipping containers. Now, they are very, very tiny when they are babies. You can only see them under a microscope. But as they grow bigger, they grow into this striped shell. And they are very, very sticky. They can adhere to the boat motor, or actually even grow on other mussels, our native mussels. And when they do this, they actually eat all of the food in the water and don't leave any for our native mussels. So they're actually out-competing our native mussels, and because of this, our populations of native mussels are struggling. Now, they are also vastly changing the ecosystem in Lake Winnipeg and the areas like the Red River leading up to it. So we are trying to find different ways to help get zebra mussels out of our ecosystem. However, they are very, very difficult to remove. So if you'd like to listen or read up a little bit more on zebra mussels, that would be great, because it may actually help you with tomorrow's poster assignment. However, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Hope you've enjoyed the video, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow.